Some of the most enduring brands begin with a simple moment of defiance, when someone refuses to accept a limiting story about who they can be. Today's guest turned one of those moments into a family media enterprise of businesses, books, and programs designed to help young people believe in themselves. We discuss how you can create dream environments for the next generation, the diversity of ways authentic leadership can and should show up, and the surprising brand strategy lessons hidden within the multiverse concept from gaming. And of course, Henry joins us with his questions about early entrepreneurship, staying grounded, and dump trucks. All this and more coming up on this episode of Building Unbreakable Brands. Welcome to Building Unbreakable Brands, the podcast where we talk to business leaders with a generational mindset. I'm Meghan Lynch. I'm an advisor to family businesses and CEO of 6 Point Strategy, which helps generational brands honor their past while evolving for the future. My guests today are Myke Connolly Sr., CEO of Launch and Stand Out, and Mikey Connolly Jr., CEO of Realistic CEO. They're also the co-authors of 2 books, Realistic CEO and Unrealistic. Welcome, Myke and Mikey. I'm so excited to have you guys on the show.
Having us.
Yeah, I'm super excited for this.
So I'd love to just start at the beginning and just hear about why you two decided to write I Am a CEO, Realistic CEO together. And maybe also like what surprised you most about collaborating on something like that as father and son?
Yeah, so we co-authored Realistic CEO after my high school business teacher told me it was unrealistic for me to become a CEO. And that was my dream since I was 10 years old. So we wanted to turn that negative experience into a positive. And that's how we came up with co-writing our children's book, I Am a CEO, Realistic CEO. And what do you say would be like the most surprising thing that came up when it comes to working together?
So quick backstory. So Michael's wanted to be a CEO since he was 10 years old. So when his teacher told him it was unrealistic for him to be a CEO for this class project, he didn't really think anything of it. And I had already wrote a children's book called Lemonade Book. And I was in the mode of writing a precursor to that. So I said to him, man, what if we write a book about your story? And his response was why I went all in. He said to me, he said, yeah, let's do it. And I wasn't expecting. He was 17 at the time. I thought he was going to be like, that's corny. But when he said that, I was like, well, why? And he said, well, Dad, I think my story could help a lot of people. Not he could become famous, not he could become rich. His reason was, I believe my story could help a lot of people. So like I went all in. And then as far as the challenge, it was cool. So as we were brainstorming, he said to me, he wanted 4 things to happen with the book. The 4th thing that he said is what got me. So first, he wanted the main character's name to be Tony because our middle name is Anthony. He wanted this story to happen in Dreamville. So now it's Dreamfield now because we have some other extensions. And then he wanted it to be 17 pages because he was 17 when this incident happened. And then the 4th thing was he wanted it to happen in the multiverse. And that was the first challenge. I'm like, dude, what the heck's a multiverse? What is that? So he was like, well, Dad, things that you're doing with Standout Truck and your businesses, things I'm going to do, things we're going to do together, it's all got to work together. So that was the challenge. And that actually made it really fun. So we have so many spinoffs. And when anyone reads I Am a CEO, Realistic CEO, you'll see Tony in that book. He's learning from the kids in Lemonade Book, which is my first book. And then you see him talking about interviewing people on his podcast, which Michael does in the real world. And all of these things just kind of tie together. So the challenges so far has just been like sticking to his plan and doing everything through this multiverse and making it even a cooler project than it would have been without it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And what I love, I come from brand strategy world. I know you guys are both in the marketing space, but also like when you say multiverse, I'm also hearing like that's brand architecture. Like he's already spotting at 17, like we can't just be, doing this over here and doing this over here, but we have to have this cohesive plan of how all these things are fitting together and working with each other. And I love, the brand strategist in me is like, yes, and that's such a great, accessible way to talk about it to people who don't necessarily, they would hear the term brand architecture and be like, what are you talking about? That sounds technical, but multiverse, yes, I understand that all these things have to connect. Why was the multiverse piece important to you, Mikey?
Well, I play video games, so games like Fortnite, and the game literally was called Multiverse. Kind of caught my attention and made me realize that we can just do that with what we're doing. So really the biggest inspiration was actual video game playing, seeing how a whole bunch of universes and a whole bunch of worlds collided together and collaborated in ways that I've never seen before. And I thought it would have been super cool that I would be able to get that kind of experience to do what I'm doing. So really for me, it was through video games, but then I realized that I know I can have my own multiverse myself, which is the coolest thing for me to be able to say that I have my own multiverse.
Yeah. What have been the most fun kind of crossover connections you've been able to make, or do you have any favorite kind of multiverse moments?
Right now, our biggest one is when Tony and Realistic CEO is reading the Lemonade book, which is the first book that my dad wrote. That's probably our biggest one so far. And then there's some other little multiverse hints inside of Realistic CEO as well.
That's cool. And it's fun because it can kind of help people explore a lot of the work that you're doing in other areas and kind of stumble upon it in that fun kind of Easter egg way. It almost makes it into a game more than just, that's awesome. It sounds like, Mike, that your response to hearing a teacher say that to your son was okay, let's do something. But was that your first reaction when he told you about that experience?
Well, so Meghan, I have a young brown-skinned boy as a son who told me at 10 years old he wants to be a CEO. And when you look at the Fortune 500 companies, because everything that we do, we always aim to be A+, right? So when you look at the Fortune 500, he doesn't see people that look like him. That's not the norm. So since he was 10 and he told me that was his dream, have always been surrounding him with CEOs. I've always been surrounded him with people that allow him to believe that he can do it. So we have what's called a dream environment. All my sons, I have 3 sons, and all of them believe they can be whatever they choose to be. And I think every parent, that's the one thing that you should arm your kids with. Just that self-belief and back and knowing that at home base, people believe in me. So when the teacher said that and he defended his dream, I honestly, my initial reaction, I was just super proud of him to be able to it is realistic because I'm going to do this and da-da-da-da. So that was cool. But then the second part, it made me think about, I posted on Facebook and the comment section went crazy. And everyone was like, you got to go to school. You got to go to school. You got to go to school. And I was like, you know what? You're right. Because it's not really about, when I made the post, I was just, like I said, I was proud of him. Right. But then I started thinking, but what about the hundreds and thousands of kids and hundreds of thousands of kids, if not millions of kids that don't have dream environments? Right. So I set up a meeting with the school, and not to bash the teacher, and they wanted the teacher to come in. I said, no, she doesn't have to come in because I don't want this to become a he say, she say thing. I just want to make a point that I hope you all use this as a learning experience for the teachers to just remind them that they're dream holders. Because if a student's coming to a teacher and this was the business teacher. So when you come into the teacher with your dream, even if the teacher doesn't believe, my hope would be teachers would go, you know what, Mikey, you would be a great CEO. I don't know much about being a CEO, but here's some things what it takes to become a CEO. And I believe if more teachers just approach the students that way, just give them that self-belief, because in order for people to reach the dreams and their goals, sometimes people need external attaboys or attagirls, and the teachers are a great source for that. So that was my wish out of that. But as far as initial reaction. I was just proud of the boy, because to me that was 7 years worth of training that came to this moment where he was like, oh no, it is realistic, and it did not affect his mindset.
And Mikey, in that moment when a teacher says something like that to you, that's also like a moment where like a figure of authority is telling you something. And it can be really easy to back away from that and just say like, oh, wait, maybe I'm wrong, or maybe my family's wrong, or whatever. But what do you think in you like came forward to be able to, challenge in that moment in a way that wasn't combative, but was standing up for yourself and for your dream?
For me, it was the 10-year-old kid that said he wanted to become a CEO. That's really what happened. And for me, I'm kind of used to that stuff. I grew up playing sports, so having people kind of trash talk you, that's how I looked at it. It was just trash talk. That's normal for me. I didn't look at it as somebody with authority saying
Mm.
something negative to me. I looked at it as a trash talker, trash talking me in a sports game.
Yeah, that's a great mentality and a way to kind of like keep it in its place and not let it have more power over you than it should. That's great. In your multiverse of brands, you've both really have built, it seems like the core of all of the brands that you're building are really around service, serving others, serving the community, inspiring others. Where does that kind of core come from?
Well, so, for me, two things. One, growing up, I lived across the street from an orphanage. And it hit me one day that the difference between those kids and me was unfortunate circumstances. And I always, in the back of my mind, loved to serve. And now as an adult, I've been a foster parent since I was 23. I'm 43 now, so almost 20, just about 20 years. And like, I'm super passionate about helping the future believe in themselves. And that rewind back too, that also starts for me. I started my first business when I was 9 years old, and I thoroughly understood what was happening in business. So like, I know kids get it. So as far as like the service, for me personally, and I'm curious as to what he would say, but for me, it's just like, I love generating revenue. I love creating business models. I love seeing things execute and convert. But I get the same feeling when, like, today we were in a school, and as we were waiting to do an enrichment, because we run a curriculum in a middle school, and as we were waiting to start our session, two kids came up to him separately and said, hey, I saw you at the fashion show. Hey, you were at my elementary school last year. I have your book. Like, hearing that and knowing the impact that that book has on these young people when it comes to them believing in themselves and learning how to create a plan and putting in what we call the LBW, the long, lonely, boring work, to see them start to get the concepts and appreciate the work that we do, that feels just as good as getting a $20,000-$30,000 check from a client.
For me, it started like my dad said. I grew up sharing my home. So I've always been the person to make sure that when we bring in kids that I treat them like my brother or sister. That was it. I didn't treat them any different. We play fought. We did everything literally like if they were my actual siblings. And that kind of helped me realize that helping people isn't even hard. It's really just treating everybody like they're human. Because a lot of times people might look at somebody from a certain background and look at them like they're less than them just because they grew up or they had an opportunity that was better than the other person. Like they just had an unfair advantage. And for me, I always wanted to be a way where my advantage of having two parents in my household that actually care about me, I use that in a way for when I'm helping other people that might not have the same opportunity as me, know that I at least care about them and I believe that they're worthy and that they're good enough to be able to achieve their dreams and can do whatever that they truly put their minds to.
That's awesome. I love that. And it's amazing. Again, it sounds like so much just starts in, day out of how you're living your lives at home, and then finding ways to amplify that in your professional life and career. So that's amazing. And Mikey, you're podcasting, speaking, running your own business, going to school, like what's the most challenging part of growing a brand, growing a career, balancing all that while you're still in a space of figuring out who you are as a person and a leader?
Honestly, the hardest part is probably kind of knowing how to separate myself from everything, because my biggest thing is I'm realistic CEO everywhere I go. Now,
Yeah.
when I'm not realistic CEO, it's kind of weird, like not like being my normal self. Like at first, being realistic CEO was the hard part, but now being Mikey, that's the part that I'm working on. How do I take off the realistic CEO and just be who I am?
Yeah, I feel like that is such a common issue of entrepreneurs. I was talking with somebody the other day who's been, running his own business since the 70s, and he's at a point where he wants his son to take over, but his big thing is like, who am I, separate from this business, and how do I give my son space to run it? And so I think already the fact that you're already grappling with that question, I think will serve you well as you grow your career, because it's something that he's not asking until he's looking at retirement. And now it's like, it feels like a big cliff that he's jumping off. But yeah, so as you navigate that, like, how are you dealing with that? Like, how are you giving yourself space to be yourself separate from the business and the brand?
Honestly, right now, I don't really think I am. Like, if I'm being completely honest with you, I feel like most of the time, even like when I'm not doing stuff with realistic CEO, like that's like in the back of my mind, like it's still in there and I'm still thinking about it 24/7. So I honestly am still learning on how I can kind of make it so that it's not 24/7 and be able to separate myself in times like when I'm not realistic CEO. I generally don't know right now. I didn't really think about it until you just asked me that question.
Yeah, well, great. That maybe even just bringing some attention to it will also help you find some ways to do that, or your dad can help find some opportunities to point out some of those things.
Can I jump in on that real quick?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So it's funny. So for me, how do I turn off standout truck king? How do I,
Yeah.
because of social media, I mean, I reach hundreds of thousands of people daily, so how do you turn it off? I think turning it off becomes just being your authentic self. And I think the biggest part is when people approach you. That's where you just got to remember, like, sometimes when you in the mall or you in a school or you at a restaurant and someone smiles or says something, that's because they probably following you. So in that 30 seconds, you got to stop and remember, okay, I got to give them standout truck king. I got to be realistic CEO for a second. And after that, I could go back to just eating or doing what I'm doing. But I think the cheat code, just anyone dealing with that, like, is being your authentic self. Like, that's one of the things I teach. 'Cause I do a lot of consulting work, and I teach this because this is super important. When you're you and you're consistent, it works. If you're one version of you here and a different version of you somewhere else, then you grapple with it. But I think that's one of the, and I think you do a really good job of, just because I watch as a proud father in so many moments. Because what a lot of people don't know, he shares when he speaks, but he's super introverted, like extremely introverted. So, like, to see him pause and give people that energy that he may not have, it's a beautiful thing to watch.
Yeah, I totally relate to the introvert piece. I love having deep conversations with people, but I definitely have to kind of like take space away and just recharge on my own in order to have that energy and meet people with, as you said, kind of like what they expect. It's such a common issue, I think. And I think your point, Mike, of making the difference between the external persona and the internal persona not so different, just the more you can keep them authentic and the same, then the less you have to worry about that gap of trying to feel like you have to pretend to be somebody you're not, which would be really draining. So,
Yeah.
one of the things that I often see is next gen leaders really having to balance respect for their parents and kind of respect for what came before them while still finding their own authentic voice, their own leadership style. Maybe they lead or have a different personality than their parents, and there can often be this moment where they feel like they have to like mimic what came before them as opposed to finding that authentic self. I'm curious if you guys have had conversations about that, about like differences in style or strengths, weaknesses, how you see differences between your leadership styles, and Mikey, particularly for you, like how you balance that, like respect for your dad versus finding your own voice.
So our leadership styles, I feel like, are definitely different. I'm more of a let you go out and do your thing more of a approach, and my dad's more of a he's gonna sit there and lay everything out that he wants you to do, and then he's gonna let you go do your thing. I'm more of a let you do your thing, see if it works, and then go back. And he's more of a here's what I want you doing right now, and then now you're on your own. Rather,
Yeah.
I'm more of a like a general. This is the kind of what I want you to do, but like figure out a way that works best for you. And then my dad's more of a having people start off in his system and then branch out into doing their thing that works best for them.
Yeah, interesting. That's such a great difference. And I could see like being a really different leadership style that kind of pulls you in different directions, especially if you have teams that may know both of you and work with both of you. Could be really different. What about Mike, for you? Do you see any like other differences between your styles or strengths or?
Yeah, so this is how I describe it. Like my two bio sons, I tell people like one of them is the left side of my brain, which is him, and one of them is the right side of my brain, which is his younger brother Aiden. But working with Michael is pretty cool because I know I can give him a task, or even with the team. So he has realistic CEO. Quick backstory is ran by 5 young people. So his brother Aiden's on the team. And we have Liana, she's his director of partnerships. She makes sure we get in different colleges and schools and whatnot. Then we have Tristan, she is director of community investment partnerships. So she reaches out to the banks and the corporations to work with us. Then we have Josh. Josh is our head of video production. And then we have Aliyah. She's our youth brand ambassador. She's 16. So her role is to just tell people about it. And he leads them really, really well. So where I have to come in sometimes is when we have to do numbers. And because, at the end of the day, this is a startup. And a lot of the startup revenue comes from my account. So what I'm trying to help him to understand is, and this is where we at, because this whole thing is a training for him. Once again, a lot of people see the realistic CEO stuff. This is 18 months in for him. And I don't believe in creating a false narrative. So he has to do all the work, right? So he's training. So like all the cool, cute stuff, that's the easy stuff sometimes to get people to rally behind. But when you have hard numbers and hard data, like, okay, we have to hit this amount of sales this week in order to keep going with this thing. So that's when I have to jump in sometimes. But just even watching him start to get it, because he's going through like learning sales and cold calling and all the hard stuff, all the stuff that people give people anxiety. He's starting to feel that. So when he goes through it, then it's like, oh, okay, I get why you were like that with that thing. So it's cool. But like overall, he's such a pleasure to work with. Here's why he's a pleasure to work with. I tell people this all the time. Like at the end of the day, I'm dad. So all the cool things that I've accomplished in business, he hears it. He sees all the things. But it's like, dad, you're dad. What are you talking about? But so when I tell him stuff, sometimes he's got to like figure it out. But he doesn't have a huge ego in the sense that he'll come back like a week, 2 weeks later. All right, Dad, I get what you're saying. So now I understand it. So, but that's why he moves so fast and so rapidly. So I thought it was cool him identifying our different styles. And His second episode of of the Realistic CEO podcast, he had Dan Moriarty, the CEO of Munson Savings Bank, on. And one of the things I don't know if he said it in the interview or post interview, but he was talking about exactly what you're talking about us having different leadership styles, and he's going to find his voice and to be okay with that. And I was glad that he said that to him, because, sometimes children want to honor us, and because of that, they want to kind of like mimic what we do. But like I tell my boys, man, I want them to be better than me. I want them to be greater than me. I want them to exceed what I've done, and do that being yourself. And I think that's how we learn. When you, once again, going back to that dream environment, we also create room where they could make mistakes. We're here to help them. And some lessons you're gonna learn the hard way. Some lessons you're gonna listen and learn. But it's a pleasure, honestly, working with them. Like sometimes we have like heated conversations, but at the end of the day, 9 to 5. This is when we're in business mode, and my goal is to never allow anything in business to cost me a relationship with one of my sons. It's just, at the end of the day, it's just money. It's just a thing. But the parent-child relationship, that's an eternal relationship.
You're listening to Building Unbreakable Brands, the podcast all about brand stewardship and crafting an enduring legacy. I'm speaking today with Myke Connolly, Sr., CEO of Launch and Stand Out, and Mikey Connolly, Jr., CEO of Realistic CEO. And now my son Henry is here to be the voice of the next generation with some questions for Myke and Mikey.
Hi, Myke. Great to meet you.
Great to meet you too, brother. Thanks for having us.
Myke, you started your first business when you were 9 years old, which is also a lot like me. What did you sell, and what made you want to start so young?
So I sold candy, and it was totally by mistake. I wasn't like a prodigy, and I was like, oh, I'm sorry. So my grandmother had a sweet tooth, and I grew up in the Bahamas. So she would fly to Florida, and she would come back with candy that the school store didn't have. And I just started taking it to school to literally just give my friends, oh, you got to try this flavor Nerd. You got to try this flavor Jolly Rancher. And it created a frenzy. So actually, that's why I learned marketing. So to me, all marketing is telling people about stuff they would love and buy if they knew it existed. So these kids literally started hounding me for candy. And I was like, you know what? I sell it now. I thought if I said that, they would leave me alone. But thank goodness they didn't. The first couple of people, how much? Now, I'm no dummy. I didn't want to start a business. I wanted these kids to leave me alone. But if these people wanted to give me money, I was willing to take it. So that's how I started my first business. My first business decision was to tell them I sold out, but come to the house, I have more. So then I started diverting all that traffic from school to our home, where my grandmother ended up taking over that business. And she did that until 2005 when she passed away. She actually quit her job 2 years later because she was selling more candy to kids and making more money than she was at her job as a waitress. But I've just always, business is 1 + 1 = 2 to me. And I just always got it. I got it early.
Yeah. So, Mikey, why was it important for you to write Realistic CEO? What is the most important piece of advice you would give a kid who doesn't think being a CEO would be realistic for them?
So the reason why I co-wrote Realistic CEO with my dad was to help inspire the next generation, to help them realize, like you said, that being a CEO is realistic as long as you have a self-belief, a plan, and action.
So what's been the most exciting part of running your podcast so far, and what's something that's been harder than you expected?
The most exciting part about running a podcast is being able to interview so much successful people and hear a lot more stories that I never even knew were possible. And the hardest part that I didn't even realize was the production when it comes to like getting the podcast out and running on time.
When you're having a tough day, what do you each do to get back into a good mindset or just keep going?
So for me, I get energy from the youth. So like anytime I'm down or I'm having a losing streak or just not, where I want to be, or my mindset is being attacked, that's when I love to go into the schools and talk to young people, because they get their energy. They're so excited. They love to learn. They want to know what to do. They want to know what to expect. And then it reminds me of when I was younger, when I was hungrier. And it reminds me of my why. Like, ultimately, my goal is to create a foundation that gives back to entrepreneurship and allow people to have resources to live out their dreams. And if I quit my dream or give up or let the difficult times get me, then I won't be able to serve the millions of people that I want from a legacy perspective.
Thanks, Mike and Mikey. I have a joke for you.
Okay. What you got?
What do dump trucks eat for dinner?
What do dump trucks eat for dinner?
Mm-hmm.
What do dump trucks eat for dinner?
Junk.
Junk food, yeah. Thanks so much for being on the show. If people want to learn more about you or your company, what's the best way for them to do that?
So for me, they could visit me at standouttruck.com. They could fill out the contact form, and I'll get back to them. I'll call them, I'll text them, and then we could work from there.
And for me, they can go on to www.realisticceo.com, and the same thing, we have a contact form that they can fill out as well.
Great. We'll link to those in the show notes. Thanks again. It was great talking to you guys.
Hey, and listen, man, keep going. You're 10. You're on the journey. You're doing a great job. Great job interviewing. Great questions. Great confidence. Whatever. The sky's the limit for you, man. And don't ever let anybody tell you your dreams are unrealistic, and don't allow your own mindset to creep in and tell you can't do it. Just keep moving forward, and anything that you want to do, man, anything you put your mind to with a solid plan and you take action, you can make it happen, brother.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
That conversation left me feeling inspired and motivated to help encourage leadership in the next generation. What really sticks with me is the Connolly's idea of a dream environment, a place where young people see possibility reflected back at them, and the importance of representation in how young people see their potential futures. I also love Mikey's story of turning criticism into fuel in the same way that he handles trash talk on the field. It's such a great reminder that confidence in leadership is something that you not only learn, but you practice. If you want to learn more about their work, visit standouttruck.com or realisticceo.com. We'll link to both in the show notes. And if this episode encouraged you or made you think differently about supporting the next generation, please share it and don't forget to leave us a review. It helps more leaders find the podcast. Thanks so much for listening to Building Unbreakable Brands.